There will be a point in your FI journey when a stable salary will become less important to you. You've built up your savings and investments to a place where you're comfortable. The freedom and flexibility over your time are more valuable than a regular paycheck. But the thought of leaving your job has you feeling nervous. Even after running the numbers and knowing you have enough, there is still a lot of emotions tied up in financial insecurity. Do I really have enough? Maybe I should work one more year. On top of that, maybe you enjoy your job. You don't want to leave your team down a member during a busy period of work, or you're unsure what life will feel like without a regular 9 to 5 job. Setting that all aside, deep down, you know it's the right thing to do. You just can't seem to pull the trigger. That's why I wanted to chat with my friends Tess Waresmith and Nicole Franklin. Both recently left their careers to pursue something else. If you listen to episode 138, you know Tess. She is a financial educator and money coach for women. Nicole Franklin and her husband, Tyler, are the creators behind the blog Not Your Ordinary Plan, where they document their journeys traveling the world while coasting to FI. In this episode, both Tess and Nicole share a ton of practical knowledge, such as a checklist to prepare for your leave, how to tell your employer you're quitting, and what to do about that pesky medical insurance. We also get into the mindset side of things, such as how to feel confident that this is the right decision and embracing the serendipity of a job-free life. If quitting is something that you've been working towards, this is the episode for you. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the world travelers and early retirees, Tess Waresmith and Nicole Franklin. You know those moments where you think, I wish I would have learned this in school? Those are the topics that we love to talk about. Join me each week as I interview experts sharing their strategies for solving problems that us young adults will face throughout our 20s and 30s. So what are you waiting for? If you want new episodes about adulting advice every Monday, hit that follow button. Well, ladies, I'm really excited about this conversation. I invited you both because I think you guys both have both some personal stories and some experience in this space, which is when you can afford to leave your job, but you're afraid to quit. I don't think we're going to get into too much of the money mechanics in today's conversation because we're assuming with this episode that somebody does probably have enough right now. Maybe they haven't reached fire, but they're in some kind of coast fi. Like there is enough there where they can take off some time, they can make a change pretty easily, but there's this emotional drag that's happening. And we could come at it from a lot of different angles. It could be the fact that you really enjoy your job and you're not exactly sure what would fill that time, or that you've been working for this company for a decade plus and you're not wanting to let anyone down, or you're not really sure what your identity would even look like without this career. So I'm excited to jump into this. And I would love to first start the conversation off with just some setting the stage and let people know kind of when you decided that it was time to leave your corporate job. And Tess, maybe I'll start with you on this. Was there a moment that you're like, I'm ready to make a transition? Or do you feel like this kind of happened naturally over time for you?
For me, it happened naturally over time, and I never put a specific time limit on it, but I think I knew I was heading in that direction. At the time I left, I had been working on a side project, which is now my full-time business as a financial educator and speaker. I had been working on that for a couple of years before I ended up leaving, and it wasn't necessarily a specific time, but a course of events with what was going on with the company, and also that my business was starting to do well, that it just seemed like a natural progression. But I actually really liked my job. I had a great salary, but I knew I wanted to do something different and something meaningful and something that helped people more. So it definitely was a very gradual thing for me.
Makes sense. Nicole, how about you? Like, I feel like I met you and you're like, yeah, I'm in, like, you don't have to say your age, but I know you're like at minimum mid-20s or something. And you're like, yes, I already took a mini retirement and now I'm like fully test driving retirement. So I'd love to hear from you kind of your career journey a little bit. And then when you decided that you officially wanted to leave.
Definitely. And yes, I'm 29 now. And yeah, essentially there was no specific moment where I was like, yep, today's it. No more of this corporate nursing world. So for background, I'm currently a nurse practitioner. So actually I love my job. I love my residents that I see. Many people would also think I'm maybe a bit crazy considering walking away right now. I'm within a few years of reaching full financial independence. I've taken a previous 3-month sabbatical where I got to live out, that flexibility and time freedom of financial independence. And I'm just really at a point now where I realize it's okay to leave and it's okay to make a change. I'm truly just wanting to live out the flexibility that financial independence can provide now. Recently, a big stressor in my life recently was a previous car accident that really made you realize life is short. And that's something I see every day in my nursing career. I hear stories of people saying, their regrets. Like I've met people that have retired and they came to the hospital, found out they had a terminal diagnosis. Of all ages, in my nursing background, I've really learned that you should really, seize the day and go after what you really want to do.
And let's be honest, at the end of the day, you're 29. So if you decide you need to make some more money, you have many, many of years to go back and make money. But I would be curious, did you ever have a train of thought that wow, you probably did a significant amount of schooling to become a nurse practitioner. Do you ever think shoot, should I really be leaving and putting behind that much school and money and investment into this career? Or I'm guessing you've come to peace with it. Of course you have, but how did you overcome, I guess, some of those thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question, Justin. My background is, together with my husband, we were $90,000 worth of undergraduate debt. A few years in, realized, wow, I don't think this 9-to-5, 2-week work vacation is going to jive with us. And luckily, we discovered FI around that similar time. And over the last 5-6 years, we have both my husband and I have put ourselves through grad school. So we've, worked our way up in our careers, learn to love our careers, learn to find negatives and balance that with positives. And, overall, I think just understanding that you can be flexibility in your financial independence plan is just truly what we're going after. I think overall life is short, and the type of travel we want to do right now might not be as great to do maybe when we're in our 30s or 40s, just because we want to live out of our backpacks and sleep in hostels, maybe some airport floors. And that thrills us. So that's what we're excited to do.
I'm really curious on your story too. How did you know that you were done working versus just wanting to work less or work in a different capacity, maybe remote or part-time, or maybe even simply just needing a break? Because I'm guessing you were kind of burning the candles on both ends, working a full-time job and also running your business and growing that. How did you ultimately decide that you needed to let go of this work versus just transform it into something else?
I think Nicole actually hit the nail on the head a little bit when you start to be faced with loss. I don't work in the field that she works in, but I would say the beginning of my realization that I wanted to make a change was when my stepdad passed away about 3 years ago now. And I started my financial education business a few months after he passed away. And I don't think that is a coincidence. I think that I wanted to create something in the background that could potentially provide me with some income doing something that I really enjoyed, helping people figure out how to grow their money using simple investing strategies. When I started it, I don't really think I was consciously saying, I'm going to start this business and then in 2 years, I'm going to leave my job. But as it started to grow and as I started to pay more attention to it, I started to enjoy my job less and less. And also I had been there for a long time. There were a lot of changes in the company. It was definitely a combination of things, but my exit was a little bit unorthodox in the sense that at the time I was a VP at a marketing agency and we had a lot of structural changes and I was asked to do some reworking of some teams. And when I reworked the teams, I actually worked myself out of a job. So that was really, it was a pretty strong sign when you're looking at, you're looking at how the best way to structure this corporate team and you're realizing that your role actually could be better suited in a different way. For me, it was definitely a combination of things, but I do think Nicole makes a great point that when you start to be around, and again, I wasn't in the medical field, I was in marketing, right? We definitely weren't doing anything brain surgery, none of that, right? We were just doing marketing for the Gap and more leggings, right? Not serious stuff. But I do think that was a huge mental shift for me. And I don't want to say I'm grateful for it because he was one of my only close family members. It was very traumatic in many ways, but it also gave me so much perspective on what it is enough to make a serious change in your life for the better. And so that all kind of coalesced into one summer when I did decide to leave. And like you said, I did remember realizing that I could go back anytime. It felt like you can't. For some reason, it feels that way emotionally, right? Like you're leaving and like you'll never be able to find another job. And I had multiple great friends tell me, if you leave and you try your business and it doesn't work out, you can always go back. But it took like 3 or 4 people telling me that at least 12 times for it to actually get into my brain space. So
Yes. Not even there, but you're probably employable somewhere. Come on.
Yeah.
Like we're all like very like sufficient employees to a degree. We're all like running our own brands or businesses too. Like we are definitely employable and have the drive in order to find another job if we do. But you brought up this phrase that you said, like you recognized that you had enough. And I find this topic around money dysmorphia really interesting. And I don't know if it's simply that, but I'm guessing it's a perception issue to an extent. Like you see your financial status and then there's like your actual financial reality to an extent. Do I have money dysmorphia right? Or Tess, can you maybe expand on that subject a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, I think dysmorphia in general is a disconnect between reality and your relationship, right? And so money dysmorphia can be on the extreme end, which is, spending a lot, not realizing that you're doing that. Or for somebody like me, it is having enough money, putting away money very, very seriously for so long that the idea of not doing that creates intense fear. And that's how I felt when I was leaving. I invest in real estate. I have several cash flowing properties. I have significant amount in retirement. If I wanted to leave years earlier and get a job that paid less, but I really enjoyed, I could have done that. I did enjoy my job, so that wasn't really an issue, but I could have done it earlier. But to be honest, if we hadn't have had this transition within my company, I don't know if I would have left because I was so afraid. And that fear comes from growing up with my mother and my stepdad constantly telling us that we didn't have enough, we don't have enough, we don't have enough. And I really internalized that. So I can and even my mother now, she's widowed. She's in retirement. She has plenty. She's going to be totally fine. Her expenses are like $20 a week of a new puzzle. Like that's all she buys. I think she's making money off Social Security, but she's terrified of not having enough money. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's rich. Like I see where this is coming from. So for me, that's how money dysmorphia shows up. And candidly, it's something that I'm working on all the time. And it's definitely something that is much, much better than it was a year ago when I left, but I had intense fear around that. And I think you can usually trace those things back to how you grew up, whether you are the same as your parents or a reaction to your parents.
I definitely grew up in a similar household too, where there's a lot of coupons. There was definitely a lot of frugality. There was a lot of conversation around how much something cost and do we really need that? And I think that definitely imprinted me more than I necessarily realized it. And then these kind of decisions where we are leaving the safety and security of a paycheck and income can be very, very challenging. And I don't know if on one end, FI has really helped with that. And I've gotten very comfortable with my own personal finance skills and knowing that I could make more money and I can save money and I can invest even if I went down to zero again. But on the other hand, like the fact that I'm like have not reached my FIRE number yet is also like plays into a little bit of the money dysmorphia that I currently have. And I'm like, holy cow, like I can't leave yet. I haven't hit this goal or this number. Did anything come up for you in that conversation? Or like, how are you recognizing that as somebody that is leaving their job, probably permanently, it sounds like, but hasn't quite reached at least the mathematical numbers that you need to have in order to be completely financially independent?
Definitely. So when I started my FIRE journey, was totally into the traditional save as much as I can, was saving over 70% of my income, living kind of like college students, but I adapted to it, kind of like the hedonic treadmill. You kind of get used to, a certain standard of living, you adapt. Over the last, say, 2 years since my first 3-month sabbatical that I went on, we reached actually a milestone of Coast financial independence. And that was a real turning point, realizing that, wow, even if I don't contribute any more to my retirement funds, I would still be able to retire when I'm 65. That's taken care of. That was cool. Like a fantastic realization that compound interest and just all the hard work in the background was really worth it for me. I would say what changed now is almost like a new era of FI. I have really been into 2 books in particular that really changed my perspectives on financial independence are the books Die with Zero and Taking Stock. Both of those books, I think, really hit on possibly a weakness in the financial independence community, which is how do you, yes, no one is enough, kind of similar to what Tess was saying, as well as how do you spend your money and why are we continuing to move like a money milestone goalpost? Do we need a money milestone to be happy? And I think that's exactly what I realized once hitting Coast by, realizing, you know what, I have my skills. I have skills of, being a nurse practitioner. I have skills of photography, same with the business, trying to work on a blog. I'm going to be okay. I think is really the realization that shifted my perspective now 2 years later to being like, well, it's okay. I'm going to leave. I'm going to take a test drive retirement. I'm not 30 yet. Everyone I've told that to, even in the fire community, I get some mixed responses because if I were to work a few more years, I would likely hit financial independence before 35. I really wanted to, but I have a very different perspective now. I'm ready to use essentially my money as a tool. Pretty much I'm doing what I've been talking about, which is I want to use my finances and I want to have my love for travel shine. This test drive retirement is kind of the start to see how I want to live my ideal day in retirement.
I'm so glad that we're progressing towards not like using FIRE as this like goal that we're trying to get to, but honestly recognizing that most of the beauty happens in the process or the path to get there. Mm-hmm. And I think about arbitrary number, but halfway through, somebody on their journey to FIRE recognizes that like, wow, I kind of already have a lot of the benefits that I'm going to get from FIRE. I just need to start taking advantage of them right now. And that's been cool. I've been hearing a lot of that conversation over the last year or two recently. Like Taking Stock is a really good example of that. And of course, Die with Zero is such a good framework of a concept that's really, I think, sparked a lot of this too. But I just had Dr. Jordan Grummett, Doc G, on the podcast recently too. And like he messed me up, man. He like the whole conversation around purpose and identity and all of these things, like he had me questioning everything that I was doing whenever it came to money. Like it's cool. I really admire a lot of the people in the personal finance space right now, because I think a lot of the FIRE community has shifted that direction. Tess, have you seen that recently?
Yes. I mean, I'm 36, so I'm a few years older. I know that Coast FIRE wasn't a thing that was talked about at all. If it was, I missed it in my deep, detailed research, which is possible. I'm not a detailer. But I think the 2 concepts that she said that I loved are Coast FI, which is something I've heard of relatively recently in the last couple of years. And that's not language that I had or even a concept that I had years ago to think through, oh, wait, I've reached this number that if I don't invest anymore, I'm going to be okay. That there's so much power in that. And that's one of my favorite things that I like to do with students in my beginner investing programs, because so many of them, even if they're not necessarily in Coast FI, they're just realizing that they're going to be okay. So it's such a that framework is really powerful and more realistic, I think, for most people than reaching your financial independence. Your true financial independence number in your 30s or 40s is incredibly difficult. Reaching a Coast FI number is something that with a few years of hard work you can achieve. And then the second thing that Nicole said that I loved is this trial run. Test drive retirement? Is that?
Yes.
I love that. Right. Like that is also language and a framework that I hadn't really thought of, because growing up, I thought, okay, I will get my degree. And then I took a little bit of a detour working on cruise ships because I couldn't find a job. But then after I got back from cruise ships, I said, okay, now I'm a serious adult. I will get this job. I will climb the corporate ladder. I will become a COO. And that's the plan. And if I leave, then you're getting off the ladder. And that's crazy. Why would I get off the ladder? I've already climbed this high. And so I love this idea of test driving retirement or taking a break. There's another, I can't remember her name, but she wrote a book about how to take a strategic break.
Jillian Johns read.
Yes, in your career. And I loved that. And so I think that there is so much power in setting shorter term goals to reach a destination that provides you with the opportunity to do something super cool. Because you're right, your 20s, and I tell you, like even 29 to 36, it's a big difference in terms of my energy level. Like I really like a nice book and a nap. 8:30 p.m. is like fine time for me to go to bed. 29, I felt a lot different. So I really support this. And I think that all these myths that we've been told that we have to like get on this ladder and climb it, and that if you take a break, you can't find a job when you come back. Are there some employers that are going to buy into that? Sure. You don't want to work for them anyway. Like any employer that doesn't want to hire you because you enjoyed your life and took a break and traveled and got perspective is an employer that you don't want to work for anyway. So things are changing. And I love the example that you're setting, Nicole.
I'd 100% agree. We actually, Nicole and I actually met through Jillian's episode. So she was on the show too earlier this summer. I swear, I have a summer of just like this rethinking around work and purpose and all of these things. Maybe it's because I'm like actively seeking some of this consultation from different people. But yeah, Jillian was also somebody that really had me rethinking some things. And it's interesting. I did a lot of talent acquisition in my career, and especially on the youth side, I hired significantly for our internship program. And I routinely heard young people asking the most important thing for them was flexibility. And at the time I thought that was like work from home or like early Fridays or like this other confines that I see around flexibility. But I love this new idea around mini retirements that are coming out as well. And I mean, Europeans have been doing this for decades now too, taking months off of time. I do think the seasonality approach to work could be and does work really well for a lot of people, but it's great to be able to just like take some time off and be very dedicated and focused on something that you wanted to do. If that's travel or a certification or raising a newborn or whatever it may be, like, shoot, we don't always have to be working 24/7.
Definitely.
What do you got,
Yeah,
Nicole?
I wanted to add to that, with the terms coast-fi, another term that I've recently been really into is barista financial independence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially the concept of me leaving my full-time career, I know that there's other ways I can make income. So some bucket list ideas are maybe doing like a work away in another country, a work visa. I would be a beer slinger at like a hostel bar. I would, do language. I would teach English in another country. I feel like there's so many out of box ideas that maybe aren't discussed, especially in the corporate world. Nurse practitioner gone beer slinger in, Southeast Asia. That's not normally a headline.
That's a good one. I like it. You should workshop that.
Yeah. So I just think opening your eyes to the possibility of what flexibility, financial independence can give you before you hit that financial milestone is just key and something I've loved. Like I'm excited to explore it like in 10 days.
I can't believe that you're setting off on this adventure so soon. This episode will come out in a month or two, and you're going to be like through your journey. You probably don't even care about this anymore. Won't even listen to it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm just running around Southeast Asia right now, having a great time, slinging beer, hopefully.
Yes.
Let's get into some of the tacticals now. Let's say that somebody is ready. They're still a little nervous, and what would really help them right now is some practicals around how you guys exited your jobs. And once again, let's assume this person likes their career and isn't necessarily trying to walk out the door with the middle finger right now, but they're trying to unpack this now and they're ready to use their work time for different things. Was there anything on your to-do list, Nicole, before you started taking some steps and notifying your employer? Are there some things that come to mind for you that you're like, maybe you should think through this before you take the step in notifying your employer?
I would say even prior to notifying an employer, I think I really focused on developing like a lifestyle design. So I guess I want to make it very clear that I'm not trying to, escape. I wasn't trying to escape my job to go travel, just as we were discussing before. I like my job. And I think having the framework even prior to asking or telling my employer that I'm going to be leaving was kind of making my everyday in the now something that I enjoyed to do, because I've never thought that magically I'm going to love everything once I leave my job and start traveling. As for the actual logistics of getting ready to leave, I would say, of course, financially, having the emergency fund, you have the travel fund or the test drive retirement fund, then you're preparing to tell your employer. I think it really just depends on the employer. I would first stress reading your policy, your HR policy on what happens when you leave. Some employers I know take all your PTO. Some are more flexible, and having an open line of communication with an employer, I think, is really important. I know, at least for Tyler, my husband, he was actually able to give a 3-month notice for his position, which helped him train in more people. And it was kind of like an open line of communication. And really for him, they were like, well, whenever you want to come back, we'd be happy to have you. So those were some of the first, I guess, key things, I went through when, getting ready to leave and preparing.
I'd love the idea of just reading the employee handbook and getting familiar with any policies that might impact you, even something, the notification process. Some employers just terminate somebody right away, right on the spot. And if you weren't anticipating that, or you needed a little bit more of a cash buffer and you were, planning to leave in 2 months and you let them know, that's kind of a shame. But I think the good employers out there recognize that and appreciate employees for everything they put into at that point in time, and appreciate employees that are thoughtful with the transition plan. Tess, did you do any hiring or managing in your career? And I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of appropriate ways to actually tell your employer or leave your employer.
Yes, I did a lot of hiring. I managed a large team, so I had people come in and out all the time. And I would say most of my experiences were pretty positive. I will say I definitely remember the people that gave a lot of notice versus the people that didn't. So if you can give more notice, it's highly valuable. There was also a time, like you said, Justin, where, we were parting ways with somebody. I mean, I think it was mutual, but then because the company was going through a difficult time, they ended up sort of forcing my hand and ending this person's employment like that day. So you have to be prepared for anything. Like once you have that conversation, I don't want to say it's naive to hopefully your company's great and they'll keep you on. Like when I went to, I think I stayed for 4 months after, and I had a lot of training to do and replacements. And I actually helped implement the structure that essentially after I fired myself, I helped implement the structure that replaced me. But I think that what's really important is also realizing that companies, they are a business. And so depending on your timing, they could just let you go that moment for financial reasons. And so you really do have to be prepared. I think Nicole shared a lot of really good tactical things to be prepared of. The other thing that we haven't specifically said that I think is really, really valuable is actually doing the calculations of what does Baristify look like, what does Coastfy look like. And I don't know if we've really defined those. And to be totally honest, sometimes I get confused between the two. I think Coastfy is when you've invested enough that you don't have to invest anymore and you can reach retirement, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Baristify is you just need to make some pumpkin spice lattes to cover your...
I think so.
Okay.
It almost seems like a blend, or it might be a genre of Coastfy, but maybe you've invested enough, but you still need some day-to-day money to pay for your day-to-day expenses.
Okay.
So yes, I need some money coming somewhere, therefore I can go work at Starbucks and make some.
Okay. So I kind of did this math, right? I did the math of if I just am making what's the minimum I need to make to not have to pull from any of my investments based on my expenses, So I did various versions of the math to know what I was getting into once I left. So I think that is really important, and understanding what your backup plan is going to be if something does happen. If you have a health crisis or you have to go take care of family or whatever it is, do you have that emergency fund like Nicole mentioned that's in place? So I think it is important to do obviously the financial background work of what's your life going to look like. I love that Nicole talked about actually designing your life, the emotional and psychological side of understanding what it means to leave. And now that you have this time, how are you going to make that meaningful? So there's the psychological part, there's the financial part, but then the logistic part is super important. Just knowing that you could get fired or let go that day or whatever. They could choose to part ways with you that day. Health insurance sucks so bad. So bad. It's the worst.
You're going to trigger Nicole right now.
I know. She already brought it up and I already saw her face before when I brought it up. I'm with you, girl. It's horrible. So just know that. Just know that unfortunately, health insurance is going to be so hard to figure out. You're going to go through 18 different platforms, and then you're not really going to be sure. Like it's just a nightmare. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So that is just something that like you really need to be. I think that is like the actual single worst part of not working for a company is just like having to deal with all that garbage.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear I'm not alone. It's nice to have someone that's gone through this. And I've been seeking everywhere, groups, any advice. Been learning along the way. Essentially, you do have to be careful about, some of the insurance, private insurance and pre-existing conditions. Even if you're under 30, have no other health conditions, but one that's flagged, you can get denied. But, really that just shows you have to be flexible. You have to have backup plans for your backup plans. And if anything, I've learned a lot about all the private healthcare world insurance plans in this last month. And I started in advance. So I'm happy I did. I still have time. I have a backup. This isn't going to delay us leaving at all. But ultimately it was harder than I thought.
Yeah. And I think maybe like, honestly, it's probably if somebody can start a business to help you navigate through this, like I'm just putting that out there on the podcast right now. Anyone listening, like if you're looking for a business idea, if you can help talk, I would have paid a lot of money for somebody to help me figure this all out, first of all. But the other thing I will say that is super important, I'm a youngish, healthy person. And when I left my job, my insurance lapsed. I think I had like 3 to 4 months of insurance coverage until it like officially lapsed. Then I had a month and I was going to move. So I thought, maybe I don't need insurance for like that month. And I almost skipped out on it because I have money dysmorphia and didn't want to pay for it for a month and have to like switch it a month later. So I almost didn't pay for it. And then a week after my insurance lapsed, I did pay for it, by the way. I got insurance. I ruptured my Achilles and had to have a full Achilles reconstruction.
Oh my gosh.
So like, just like cautionary tale, if you're like, I'm a healthy young person, like maybe I don't need to deal with this, just do it because the universe delivers when you don't want it to sometimes.
Yes.
So.
And I'm going to throw out there is a big difference between travel insurance and world health insurance. So make sure you're covered, especially with financial independence assets. You would, hate to have something happen at any point and it deplete your assets in the state of the U.S. healthcare system. So it is important. And sorry to hear about your Achilles.
Can we bullet out some options for people that are a little bit nervous about health insurance? Nicole, you kind of have this unique situation because you're looking for world insurance. You're going to be in Southeast Asia, so you have almost a more specialized situation at hand. But what are just some of the options? I don't think we need to get into the details, but I want to reassure people after we just unreassured them that there will be options out there, and don't worry, like this is all figure outable.
Yes, sorry. So audience, I promise it'll be okay. You'll find a way. I would say the biggest difference is so if you leave your job, COBRA is an option. COBRA, you can actually back pay up to, I believe, 60 to 90 days. Depends on the plan. I'm also not an expert with anything I'm saying.
Which is required insurance for your previous employer to offer you, correct?
Yes. So you don't have to elect it right away, but you do have like a back pay period if something were to occur, at least in our circumstance. So private insurance is what covers in my specific situation. And those are like world insurance expat plans. And there's many, many companies on the internet, some that are well known, such as Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, to name a few. And then there's also, there are marketplace plans. So that is something I've dipped my toe into. And that is a very complex world, especially, and very important. I am definitely not an expert in it, but it is something that I have been looking into, as it would provide probably even more comprehensive coverage in the United States, depending on your plan and also what your income is going to be as well is greatly dependent on that. So I'm sure you have some other options too, Tess, since you've gone through it.
Yeah, I think you did a good job. I think the good news is, after we shared some horror stories there, like the good news with health insurance is there are good options for you before you even go looking. Worth it to think about what you need, right? Based if you have pre-existing conditions, or for me, I'm an athlete, so I wanted to make sure there was like some kind of physical therapy coverage. I also travel a lot, so I didn't want to get an insurance like a HMO where you have to go get a referral before you go see a specialist. PPOs tend to have more flexibility. So look, it is a pain in the ass, but it's definitely worth it to do some research. If you can find a human to talk to, that's helpful. That's what I actually ended up doing eventually, was finding a human to find insurance, and that was well worth it. So I think it's also like, we're talking about financial independence here. Like, part of keeping your financial independence is, like Nicole said, like protecting your assets. So you get the opportunity to find your own health insurance because you've worked so hard. And then of all your expenses, you're going to pay a lot more to live, to travel, to eat. So it's a small price to pay for a lot of freedom and optionality in your life.
And don't be afraid. There are so many people that have done this before you too. So the FIRE or the FI communities, the Facebook groups that are out there, drop a lifeline out there, because there are hundreds of people that have dealt with this situation. And I see it all the time in these Facebook groups. They are happy to jump in and start offering some guidance or give you some direction on some things to explore. And it's, I don't want to say it's fun, but it is a little exciting to like learn something new and to tackle a new subject. Like, how long has it been since, we really started mastering personal finance, where there's this like whole new big topic that came up that we have to kind of start from ground zero and really learn about. So I kind of like Tess's reframe here, that it's a great opportunity for us to choose our insurance and also to get educated in the world of health insurance.
Agreed. There really are a lot of options. I've gone through my options, but hey, now I'll maybe be able to answer people on forums and Facebook groups and help others who might be listening that have a similar situation. So it is possible.
Nicole, if I don't see you in those Facebook groups, I will tag you and I will force you to answer, because I know you got the knowledge.
I'll be happy to.
Well, let's round out this conversation, guys. I really wanted to end with kind of some thoughts around the possibilities that lay ahead. There is an opportunity cost to staying with your employer. And of course, you might lose a stream of income, but you're tied down and your flexibility is constrained through there. Even just your energy and effort that you can put into things is diminished. And I do think if it's makes sense financially for you and you're ready and equipped and you've thought through some of the things that we've just talked about in this episode, it's worth taking the plunge. And both of you have, and both of you are having some really exciting things that are happening in your life. And I love this concept, or this idea of quitting to something versus from something. And of course, Nicole, we've talked extensively about you test driving retirement. And Tess, we haven't really talked too much, but you kind of jumped full-fledged into your business. I'd love to talk a little bit about what 1 year kind of post corporate life looks like, if you're feeling confident about that decision again, and some of the opportunity and flexibility that's afforded you today.
Sure. So I'll caveat this by saying I was fortunate enough to do a lot of travel in my 20s through different jobs, through working on cruise ships. So I've lived a lot of different places and I've done a lot of travel already. So that wasn't really my primary thing, but I do think that's one of those things that if you haven't done that, that is something that you want to do when you're younger, when you have more energy. So I think that Nicole, I think it's awesome what you're doing. You're my hero. It's so cool.
You're so sweet.
What I think is really important to point out is that I left when I was very, very financially stable. That has given me the space and opportunity to start to create a business with a lot less stress. Do the math to understand, what it's really going to take. Because at the end of the day, a 9-to-5 is a great opportunity to build wealth. That's how we reach FI. So we want to be grateful for that. And I think there is a lot of glamorization around entrepreneur life. And I'll tell you right now, having a 9-to-5, way easier way to make money. Like working a business is really hard. It's also really exciting, rewarding. I've helped more people than I could have ever imagined. And it's been an incredible year. And to answer your question, Justin, it was completely the right time for me. I'm very glad that I left. The other thing that I think is exciting, if you have your finances in place, even if you don't know exactly what you're going to do, is it's hard to explore different avenues if you don't have any white space in your life. And unfortunately, a lot of us in those 9-to-5s, we don't have the space to really try new things. I love the idea of, if you need some income, but you're at a place where you have some flexibility, quitting your job and finding something part-time. I've found so much clarity on what I want my life to look like and who I want to spend time with and what's important to me in the white space that I never had when I worked full time. You can do all the planning you want, but when you leave, your life might look totally different. I do think as long as you have your finances in place and you feel confident that you have time to figure these things out, I think I have not heard of very many people regretting leaving, right? Most people, even if it doesn't work out and they go back to a different job, right? You will regret not trying that thing that's on your mind. You'll regret that for sure. So I think if it's something that's on your mind and this episode is speaking to you and you've been on the fence of leaving corporate and you want to explore something new, I don't think you're going to regret it. If you're listening to this and you're feeling that, then you have the financial independence to do it. And very few people regret the things that they did. They regret the things they didn't do.
Anything to add, Nicole?
The points you made about gaining clarity, when you can separate yourself from your 9 to 5, not have any distractions, outside noise, understanding like what you want to do. I think that's huge. That's a large reason why I actually started making the blog prior to my husband and I leaving this month, was kind of to see if we want to continue it even while we're traveling, because I am aware that people have so many other ambitions and dreams that they want to do besides maybe like be a long-term traveler. There's so many other things that you mentioned. You can start a business, you can, I don't know, you can be a house sitter. I don't know, you can you can go and do so many other different things in your life rather than going to go be a long-term travel like we're doing. But overall, I think getting outside of your comfort zone, looking forward to doing something outside your comfort zone, and looking forward to like what you're about to work towards, and focusing less on what you're leaving behind is also really important.
No doubt. And even like Tess, for example, I love your money content, but what I love about your Instagram too is just like seeing your garden. And I'm like, I want to be able to just like piddle in my garden for 4 hours and like not have to think about a meeting that I have scheduled on my calendar. Like that is like some things that I realize I can't even articulate or think about the fact of like what that life looks like until you go and leave your job and create this white space and get to like explore interest and hobbies, not even like potential other careers or businesses or anything like that, but just like things that you're curious in. And maybe one of those does turn into a business. Like I started podcasting during my very first sabbatical, and I totally thought, because I'm too type A, I was like, I need something to do during my sabbatical. I thought it was going to be podcasting. And whenever I exited my sabbatical and rejoined the workforce, I had so much fun podcasting that I doubled down on it and continued doing it. And now almost 5 years later, I run a podcast agency and I continue to host this podcast. And I am so grateful that my mini retirement, my sabbatical, gave me that opportunity to explore that curiosity and kind of led me to where my life is now. It's really cool. I like the white space. I really love all your guys' thoughts, but most importantly, just the inspiration to say you have enough right now and you can do this. And there are always fallback options, but you would regret it if you don't try. What you're dreaming about or imagining right now is really powerful message. So I'll start with you, Tess. You got a cool brand out there. You're helping a lot of people. You actually have a really good resource that I think would be really relevant to this conversation right now. Do you mind sharing about it and kind of where people could find that resource?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for the plug on my content. I am on Instagram at Wealth with Tess, and I love talking about money, even though a lot of other people don't like talking about it. So I share all kinds of money stuff, comfortable and uncomfortable on there. So come hang out at Wealth with Tess. But the other thing that I think is really, really applicable to our conversation here is that recently I created this free mini course that helps you map out your income and expenses, helps you figure out with the money you have now, what that could compound to, and also helps you calculate and play with a few different options of your financial independence numbers. So if you are somebody that is looking to make a change, maybe it's not even necessarily leaving your job full time, maybe it's part time or making a career pivot, these are the first steps that I would take. And so that it's a totally free mini course. That's wealthwithtess.com/FI. You can grab that for free.
Nicole, your blog is about to get hot and heavy here with 10 days until you launch. Where can people find the blog and what can they expect to read?
Yes. We're about to have a lot of exciting changes. So my blog is notyourordinaryplan.com. You can also find more real up-to-date updates going on my Instagram, notyourordinaryplan_. We've been posting so far a lot about even long-term trip preparation, insurance. And we talk a lot actually about money mindset, different types of financial independence. So lots of posts actually on like LeanFi, BaristaFi, CoastFi, money mindset, and how you can make financial independence flexible for you and kind of live financial independence on your terms.
I love that. Well, ladies, let's round it out. I got one final question for you. Tess, you've answered this before. So Nicole, you get to start this one off. And Tess, you can rethink the answer if you want to rethink the answer or double down on it. But Nicole, if you had the opportunity to teach a 16-week class to a group of graduating college seniors on a topic that isn't normally covered in the classroom, what would you teach and how would you teach it?
Love this question, Justin. I would say for me, I'm going to actually do kind of a twist so I went to nursing school, and nursing is kind of like the art and science of nursing. So, you have the science behind it and you also have the art, how you are a nurse. I think that can be applied to finances, the art and science of finances. So the financial side, obviously, all the things you need to know, from savings account to how you save money to Roth, traditional IRA, all the nitty gritty. That could take probably 16 weeks, but I think a really important part that should counter and go with that is the art of finances. That has to do with kind of like your money mindset, kind of almost like an ideal day setup, which can help influence careers. It can help influence how you want to pursue, maybe to be financially secure. So overall, I think teaching a course that intertwines the art and science of finances would be my course selection.
I love that. Tess, what about you?
I love that answer.
Thank you.
I'm guessing my answer was investing 101, which I would probably stick with because especially to our conversation we're having today, and especially in under-resourced schools where they aren't getting any kind of like real financial literacy training. I think the idea of compound interest is something you hear in school and it's never really tied to something in reality. So I would love to go back in time and visit every high school student and do just the basic math of like, if you put $100 of your your babysitting money in something like over time, this is what it's going to amount to, right? We learn about compound interest, but not in any actual real way that helps us truly comprehend what that means. I know I certainly didn't, I knew what compound interest was, but I didn't really understand. So I think it would be understanding how to build wealth through, and I'm going to amend my answer a little bit here, understanding how to build wealth through investing, but also through like income creation, like whether that's different ways to start a business or different things to monetize. I love all the stuff that Cody Sanchez is doing, just like crazy business ideas. Like you could sell pink hats on a Vegas strip and make a crap ton of money doing that, like just different ways to live and a different perspective, which I think is somewhat aligned with what Nicole said.
And probably a good entry point for a lot of people at that age too, because I think they'd be very curious to learn, how do I make money, or how do I, how do I do this? And then kind of turn around and be like, cool, you made some money. Here's something you could do with it to set your future self up. A very awesome course. And I'd be excited to be students in both of your guys' courses. Nicole, Tess, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on The Struggle is Real. This has been a blast, and hopefully many more conversations to come.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin.
Thanks for listening to the episode. As always, I appreciate your kind words. If you want to leave us a rating and review on your podcast player right now, that would absolutely make my day. If you want to find episode show notes, our blog, and other great resources, head over to tsirpodcast.com. If you have follow-up questions, an idea for a future episode, or just want to say hi, we have a contact form on our website, and those messages go straight into my inbox, and I promise you, I will reply. But all right, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. I love you all, and you're not alone. Let's keep making it through our struggles together.
Mm-hmm.